Welcome back to the deep dive. You know, uh, we love to take these fascinating, sometimes even bizarre things that you send us and really unpack them.
Yeah.
So today we're looking at this satirical story
Okay.
from China
Interesting.
about shared stents. And let me tell you, it gets wild.
It really does. And, even though it's satire, it shines a light on some very real anxieties people have about healthcare,
Yeah.
especially in a rapidly developing country like China, where costs and access are constantly evolving.
Exactly. So we have this story about these two guys, Lao Wang and Lao Lai,
Okay.
who both need stents.
Right.
These are tiny tubes inserted to prop open clogged arteries in the heart.
Hmm.
Now, Lao Lai goes for the top of the line, imported, titanium alloy premium stent.
Wow.
You know, the kind that makes you feel like $1 million.
Yeah.
Well, more like several thousand, judging by the price.
Right, and that's where Lao Wang's situation gets interesting because of China's national procurement policy, sometimes called jikai. He ends up with a much cheaper, domestically made, stainless steel inclusive model.
The names themselves, titanium alloy premium versus stainless steel inclusive,
I know.
are hilarious.
It is.
It's like the story is poking fun at how we automatically assume the pricier option is better,
Right.
even when it comes to something as crucial as our health.
It really does highlight that perception, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But this jikai policy is worth a deep dive itself.
Okay.
It's actually been quite impactful in making essential medications and devices like stents more affordable for the average Chinese citizen.
Really?
Think of it as a massive group buying scheme where the government negotiates with suppliers to get the best prices.
Okay, so it's like Costco for healthcare.
Exactly.
Bulk discounts.
And this has led to some remarkable successes.
Okay.
Like the price of certain cancer drugs dropping by over 70%.
Wow.
But there have also been challenges,
Such as?
particularly when it comes to ensuring a stable supply and encouraging the development of new innovative treatments.
So there's this tension between making healthcare affordable and making sure that cutting costs doesn't mean sacrificing quality.
Right.
And that brings us back to Lao Wang and his stainless steel inclusive stent.
Yeah.
Now, the story goes on to describe this whole shared stent concept, and that's where the satire really kicks in.
Oh, really?
They talk about it being like a shared bicycle, having to pay a return fee, even a nurse scanning Lao Wang's chest with a QR code reader for payment.
Pure comedic gold, isn't it?
Yeah.
Obviously, reusing stents is not a real thing.
Yeah.
There are incredibly strict regulations globally against it due to the very real risks of infection and other complications, but it cleverly plays on those anxieties we all have about potential cost-cutting measures.
Right, because even though it's ridiculous, you can't help but think, what if?
Yeah.
What if they actually did start sharing stents to save money?
Right.
Would you be responsible for keeping it in pristine condition like a rental car?
A fascinating question.
Yeah.
And it brings up the issue of stent lifespans. In reality, stents are designed to be permanent implants, but they do have a lifespan.
Yeah.
And there's always a chance you might need a replacement down the line.
Okay.
So this story takes that real concern and dials it up to 11 for comedic effect.
And the price discrepancy between these stents plays a huge role in the story, too.
Okay.
Initially, Lao Lai is bragging about his fancy imported stent,
Right.
but after the national procurement policy kicks in, the price drops drastically, and he's suddenly feeling like he overpaid.
Oh, wow.
It also feels like a commentary on how healthcare choices can become tangled up with social status and keeping up with the Joneses, so to speak.
Absolutely. We see this in many countries, not just China.
Yeah.
There's this inherent human tendency to associate higher price with higher value, even in healthcare. But as we've seen with this jikai policy, the reality is much more nuanced.
Okay.
A lower price doesn't automatically mean lower quality, and sometimes the more affordable option might be the most suitable one clinically,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And that brings us to another fascinating aspect of this story. The ending, it describes Lao Wang joining a protest against shared stents, while Lao Lai, still fuming over the price drop,
Oh, wow.
wants a refund on his premium stent.
It's such a clever way to wrap things up.
It is.
You have these two contrasting reactions
Yeah.
to the same policy, both exaggerated for comedic effect,
Right.
but also reflecting real concerns people have.
Yeah.
On one hand, you have the fear of cost-cutting measures going too far, leading to substandard care, which is symbolized by Lao Wang's protest.
Right, and on the other hand, you have Lao Lei's frustration with the constantly shifting landscape of healthcare costs.
Yeah.
He made a decision based on what he thought was best at the time, and now he feels cheated.
Right.
It speaks to the need for transparency and predictability in healthcare pricing.
Yeah.
Something that's a challenge in many systems worldwide.
It's like the story is saying, hey, affordable healthcare is great, but what about fairness? And that whole protest scene hints at something else that's really interesting. Patient advocacy in China. It's not something we hear a lot about in Western media, but the story suggests that people are willing to speak up and demand better healthcare.
Absolutely. Patient advocacy is a growing force in China.
Yeah.
And it takes many forms, from online forums and social media campaigns to organized protests and lobbying efforts, for example. There have been successful campaigns advocating for access to specific medications for rare diseases.
Oh, wow.
And also pushing for greater transparency in clinical trials.
So it's not just about complaining, it's about actively working to improve the system.
Exactly.
Now, I know we keep coming back to this, but the shared stent concept itself is so outlandish.
It is.
It's like a metaphor taken to the extreme.
It is.
But if we peel back those layers of satire, are there any real-world parallels?
That's a great point, and I think what the story is tapping into is this underlying fear of healthcare becoming depersonalized and transactional. The idea of a shared stent represents this nightmare scenario where medical care is treated like a commodity, where efficiency and cost-cutting trump individual needs and patient well-being.
It's like the ultimate reduction of healthcare to a purely economic equation, right?
Precisely. It speaks to this universal desire for healthcare that is both effective and humane. And that brings us back to the core question.
Okay.
How do we strike that balance?
Right.
How do we ensure that everyone has access to the treatments they need without compromising on quality or losing sight of the individual patient?
It's a massive challenge, and there's no easy answer.
No.
But this satirical story from China, even with its absurdity, encourages us to have these conversations.
Yeah.
It prompts us to think critically about what kind of healthcare system we want to see both locally and globally.
Exactly. And it reminds us that healthcare is not just about policies, budgets, and technology. It's ultimately about people.
Okay, so we've talked about the shared stent concept, the national procurement policy, and even touched on patient advocacy in China. But what about the global implications? Does this story have anything to say to people living in countries with completely different healthcare systems?
I think it does, because while the specific context might be China, the anxieties the story highlights are universal.
Okay.
The fear of rising healthcare costs, the pressure to make difficult choices about treatment options, the desire for both quality and affordability. These are concerns shared by people all over the world.
So even though the shared stent scenario is fictional, the underlying issues it raises are very real and relatable to everyone.
Yeah.
It's like holding up a distorted mirror to the global healthcare landscape,
Right.
highlighting the challenges and prompting us to find solutions.
Exactly.
I hadn't thought about it that way, but you're right.
Yeah.
So what are some of the key takeaways from this deep dive into the world of shared stents?
Well, for me, the biggest takeaway is that healthcare isn't just about medicine. It's about economics, politics, social dynamics, and even humor. As this satirical story shows, it's a complex web.
Yeah.
And this story helps us see those connections. I agree. And I think another key takeaway is that innovation in healthcare is a double-edged sword.
Okay.
On one hand, we're seeing incredible advancements in technology and treatment options, which have the potential to improve lives dramatically. But these advancements often come with a hefty price tag,
Right.
raising questions about who benefits and who gets left behind.
It's like we're constantly trying to find that sweet spot between groundbreaking discoveries and equitable access.
Yeah.
And this shared stent story, even though it's fictional, reminds us that the pursuit of cheaper healthcare can't come at the cost of quality or patient safety.
Exactly. It's a balancing act. And it's not just about finding the right policies.
Yeah.
It's also about fostering a culture of transparency and accountability in healthcare. Patients need to be informed about their options, and they have a right to demand the best possible care.
Which brings us back to the importance of patient advocacy.
Yes.
It's encouraging to see that people are becoming more empowered to speak up and demand better healthcare, not just in China, but around the world.
Absolutely. Patient voices are crucial in shaping the future of healthcare. They provide a real-world perspective that policymakers and healthcare providers need to hear. And with the rise of social media and online platforms, patients have more tools than ever to connect, share information, and advocate for change.
So while this deep dive started with a rather absurd story about shared stents,
Right.
it's led us to some pretty profound insights about the global healthcare landscape.
It has indeed. And it reminds us that even though the challenges are complex, they are not insurmountable. By fostering dialogue, encouraging innovation, and prioritizing patient well-being,
Yeah.
we can work towards a future where quality healthcare is accessible to all.
And sometimes a little bit of humor can go a long way in sparking those important conversations.
Absolutely.
So to everyone listening, the next time you come across a news story or social media post about healthcare, take a moment to dig a little deeper. Ask questions, challenge assumptions, and remember, you have a voice to leave. Use it to advocate for the kind of healthcare system you want to see.
That's a powerful message to end on healthcare as a shared responsibility, and we all have a role to play in shaping its future.
Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive. Until next time, stay curious and keep those questions coming.
共用支架 Pulse Pounding Price Tag。 老王最近总觉得胸口闷得慌，心跳快得像打鼓。去医院一查，医生皱着眉头说：“你这心脏问题不小，得装个支架。”老王一听，心里咯噔一下，支架那得多少钱啊？医生推了推眼镜，慢悠悠地说：“以前得13000现在国家集采了，价格跳水，只要700块。”老王瞪大眼，嘴巴张得老大啊！医生赶紧安抚，别急，原来叫钛合金尊享版，现在叫不锈钢普惠款，效果一样，就是名字改进了。老王瞪大眼，700，这不会是二手翻新的吧？医生神秘一笑，人家这叫共用支架，装完还能拆下来给下个人用。老王捂着胸口，哎呦，那我这心跳更快了。一，老李的进口或与老王的集采款。几天后，老王在公园撞见邻居老李，两人聊起支架。老李得意洋洋，我装的可是进口钛合金支架，花了13000，轻便又耐用，10年保固。老王讪笑，我这不锈钢普惠款才700，医生说效果一样。老李挑眉，便宜没好货，你这支架能撑几年？我听说啊，老王打断，医生说了，不锈钢和钛合金一样抗造。再说了，你那进口货不也是中国代工的？老李噎住，那能一样吗？就在两人僵持时，旁边的王大妈插话，听说现在钛合金支架也降价了，我家老伴前几天装了，只花了3000。老李震惊，什么3000？王大妈点头，国家集采嘛，便宜了，你这13000花的有点冤啊。老李脸色难看，我这是高端货，2院内的隐藏规则。隔天，老王觉得胸口隐隐作痛，赶紧回医院复诊。医生看检查报告，支架运作正常，但你要好好保护身体。老王紧张，为啥？这支架不是挺结实吗？医生压低声音，这是共用支架，使用期限3年，到期得回收。老王跳起来，回收。那我心脏咋办？医生淡定，再装个新的呗。集采后价格低，换支架跟换手机合适的。老王崩溃，哎呦，我这心跳又乱了。老王回家后越想越慌，翻出支架说明书，发现一行小字：注意事项：1，请避免剧烈运动，以防支架磨损，影响回收品质。2，到期未归还者，需支付超期滞纳金，每日支架原价1%。老王抖住手打电话，医生，这支架咋还收滞纳金啊？医生语重心长，老王啊，这叫永续医疗，你保护好支架就是为社会做贡献。3，老李的嘲讽与反转。老王憋屈地和老李抱怨，老李笑得直拍大腿，哈哈哈哈！共用支架，你这不成医疗界的共用单车了吗？老王 瞪眼，笑啥？你那进口货不也降价了？听说集采后钛合金支架砍到3000了。老李笑容僵住，啥？我这可是13000装的。老王，扳回一城，时代变啦，你那尊享款现在叫过气土豪版。4. 维权风，波与结局。某天，老王胸口剧痛，救护车赶到时，护士掏出手机一扫他胸口的条码。护士微笑，检测到您的共用支架已到期，未支付滞纳金，暂无法启用急救模式。老王眼前一黑，那我咋办？护士安慰，我们可以启动分期付款方案，每月支付100，立即启动临时救援版。老王无奈，行吧，快给我启动，能医保报销啊。护士，急救范畴只能费支付宝微信。事后老王加入了医疗维权大队，举着牌子站在医院门口大喊，共用支架不共用，生命怎能标价？旁边的老李则悄悄凑过来，低声问，喂，你维权能不能顺便帮我退拆价啊？走，消防车来了。